We've got two more speakers this afternoon, and with that, I want to invite our first to join us here on stage. Her name is Lisa Sursavage. She oversees all aspects of Jetco's marketing and public relations, from writing marketing collateral to handling press outreach, maintaining Jetco's social media presence, coordinating events, and handling external and internal communication. Additionally, Lisa coordinates all speaking engagements for Jetco's president, Brian Felco, as he travels through the world teaching companies how to create a vibrant company culture like the one at Jetco. She has a bachelor's and master's degree in English from Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, and more than 8 years of experience in nonprofit and corporate marketing and public relations. She is a certified yoga instructor, teaching throughout Houston, and loves traveling and being outdoors. She will discuss your corporate culture, including how corporate culture affects attraction and retention, and the impact of culture and employee satisfaction to the bottom line. Please help me welcome Lisa to the stage. Lisa?
Hello. So if someone had told me 5 years ago that I was going to be in the trucking industry, I would have thought that they were crazy. I started with marketing and public relations for a university. I was coordinating presidential debates between Obama and McCain, and moved on from that to work at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, working with artists. Ended up at an ad agency where I met Brian Felco and started working with him on his first book as an editor. All of this did not lead up, obviously, to working in the trucking industry, but somehow I am here. And I can tell you that the reason that I am here is most likely because when I walked in to interview with Brian at Jetco Delivery, there was a different feel about the company. And it was something that I hadn't experienced in any of my previous jobs. But when I walked in, I noticed that the people were happy. Everybody was working together. Everybody seemed to be working for the greater good of the company. People were friendly. And there was just this different feeling that I hadn't experienced. And it really all came down to company culture. So I think back on that time, and I think that had I walked in and not experienced that sort of feel when I entered Jetco, I probably would not be standing here right now. I didn't intend to end up in the trucking industry, but it was the culture that attracted me. So when you look at these various brands and logos, which as a marketing person, I love them, you probably have a different feel or something that's attached to each of these brands. And most likely it involves culture. So if you think Disney, for me personally, when I think of Disney, I think of being a kid, being happy. I also think, though, going back when I was a little older, everything's so clean. Everything's timely. You know that the parade's going to happen at 1 o'clock if they say that the parade's going to happen at 1 o'clock. And this is all systematic of their culture. This is something that's ingrained in their employees to produce this experience for the customer. Same thing if you look at the Ritz-Carlton. We can all easily go down the street and get a bed for $100 a night. But for some reason, when it comes to the Ritz-Carlton, people are willing to pay a higher price. Well, why is that? Because it's an experience. Because you know that when you go to the Ritz-Carlton, you're not paying for a bed. You're paying for the experience of what they have to offer there. Same thing with CVS. If you think about CVS and their culture, recently, as many of you know, CVS stopped selling cigarettes because they said part of what their culture is about is promoting the wellness of their customers. So why are we selling cigarettes if we're trying to promote wellness? Well, they took a huge loss, billions of dollars. And in the end, they're actually gaining more because they've attracted more people because they're living by their values. And then you think of Volkswagen. What happened with Volkswagen? Exactly, the big scandal that they had. So now, for me personally, and I had a Volkswagen, I don't have one anymore, but when I do look at that brand, that's the first thing that comes to mind. So when people see your logo and they see your brand, what is the first thing that they think about? You need to ask your customers if you don't know, because it's a big thing. And it's most likely a reflection of their experience, which is a reflection of the internal culture. So what is culture? It's very simple. Culture is the right people and the right process working in harmony. You can have the wrong people and the wrong process, and you're also going to have culture, but it's probably not the one that you want. So in a poor culture, what does that look like? It's delegated, it's reactive, and there's most likely no leadership support. But in a rich culture, your employees are engaged. This is what I saw when I walked in to my current position. I saw that employees were engaged, that there are no silos, meaning you don't have one department working over here and one department working over here. Everybody's working for the greater good of the company. You're working to promote something, promote an experience for your customer. And the customers sense this unique experience. So when it comes to creating a healthy culture, I just want to offer some tips. And the reason we're talking about this today is for the exact reason I joined the current company that I'm at. It's about attracting and retaining the best talent that you can. So why do people want to come and work for your company? Could be the money, maybe. But oftentimes it's probably because they're looking for a certain culture where they're going to fit in. Why do people want to go work for Google? Maybe the money. But everybody knows Google has a certain culture. They offer something different to their employees, and there are people that are very attracted to that. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. But people are looking to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and that's where you're going to find your team. So one way to do that is to make sure that you're tearing down silos. I think there's sometimes a perception in the trucking industry that we have office staff here, and we have drivers over here. That old feeling of the plexiglass window where drivers come in, they get their assignment, and then they leave. So something to think about is making sure you're not creating that distance between your drivers and your employees. Because if you're trying to recruit the best drivers, which we all know we all are, we're in a driver shortage, and a driver walks in and they see that there's this glass wall or there's this feeling of separation between the office, how's that going to make them feel? Like, why would that person want to come and work for you? So consider that. Maybe when you go back to your office, take a look at what it looks like. Is it welcoming? Is a new employee going to come in and say, I feel like this is one big group, one big family working all together, no matter how many employees you have on your team? Another thing to consider when you're recruiting and trying to retain, and it comes down to your company's culture, is knowing who has power versus who has authority. So power looks like I could write a memo and I could say, John is now president, and send it out to everybody. John is actually president, and this is power that he has. But I can't write a memo saying, and send it to everybody on the team saying, John is now a leader. These are two very different things. And oftentimes you're going to find that the leaders that you have in your company are your frontline employees. They're your drivers. They're the people that are dispatching. So figuring out who those people are and bringing those people into your culture to create the culture that you want is what you're going to need. And those people may not be the people that you want leading your culture. So it could come down to deciding why it is that that person's leading the way and who they're bringing along with them, so that you can determine what sort of company you want to create to attract the best. Another thing, we call it the 3 T's when it comes to having power: treatment, transparency, and trust. So treatment isn't, I'm not talking about vulgarity or treating people like that. I'm talking about knowing who your employees are. Especially if you have a large fleet, I get that it's hard when you have drivers that are out on the road all the time, but they do come into the office. So knowing who your drivers are, taking that time to say, hey, how are you? Do you know if they have a family at home? Ask how the family's doing. Figure out who that person is. Because so many times we get drivers coming into our office and we ask them, well, why did you come to Jetco? We want them to say because we're the best. And of course, we think that we are. But also, it's because a lot of them say, well, when I left my last company, I was just a number. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know that I had a family at home that needed me home by 5 o'clock. Or they didn't know that I have a kid that I have to pick up from school every day. So really taking the time to invest in treating your team with some respect and knowing them as a person first and an employee second is going to help you bring in those people that you want working for you. Transparency is just all about making sure you're not having closed door meetings. Management's here, we go over here, we close the door, and then no one knows what's going on in the company. That's going to breed fear. So making sure that when you're talking with your employees, that you're open, you're honest, you tell them what's going on in the company. We send a lot of emails to our team. It's one of the ways we communicate most often. But they're very clear. Here's what's going on. Here are our financial reports. We're open with our team. We let them know what's going on. And then trust, of course, making sure that you're establishing trust, not just between, if we're talking all managers in here, not just manager to your direct reports, but reports to one another too. Another way to help you build your culture is to create an internal brand. So this is the first time that I've ever come into a company where there's been an internal brand, and I don't know who in here already has an internal brand. Okay, not a lot of you. So if you don't, this is a really good place to start if you want to start building a culture where you can pull everybody together. I wish I could take credit for this, but I can't. It was done before I came along to Jetco. But this is our internal culture, our internal brand. It's driving to perfection, D2P. It is everywhere. It's on our walls. It's on the sleeves of our shirts. It's the first thing that our drivers see when they get into their trucks. And if you ask anyone on our team, what is D2P or what is driving to perfection, every single person will be able to tell you. They might have a little bit of a different version of it, but it'll come down to it's about safety. It's about communication. It's about making sure that I do the right thing so that I can go home every night. And these are the kinds of things that people want to be a part of. They want to know that you're putting safety first, that you have a safety culture. And this is just a visual affirmation of what that culture looks like. Another idea for you guys to start to create this sense of culture where you can look to retain and keep the best. This is our culture contract. So the first day the employee comes in, we have them sign this. And basically it's our rules of engagement. It outlines who we are, what we expect of everyone, and when something does go wrong, if there is a safety incident or if there is something that needs to be corrected along the way, this is the first thing we bring out. So we usually use this as a training tool and say, hey, remember, you signed this on the first day, you kind of got off track a little bit, what do we need to pull you back in? So if you don't have a culture contract, I would definitely advise creating one. And when you create it too, don't just have your managers do it, have your team. Ask your team, what is it that's important to us? What are our main objectives? What do we believe in? Let them put together the culture contract. So I know we have a lawyer in the room, so I have to be careful now about eliminating toxic behavior, but something to consider. These are our 4 kind of guys. Lack of accountability. The employee is always saying, that's not my job. The one in the bottom corner, this is the meeting after the meeting. We're all sitting in a meeting, everybody agrees, we're going on our way, we get out of the conference room, and then someone goes over to the other employee and was like, that was a terrible idea, I don't know why anybody agreed to that. Not vocalizing it, so we all know these people. And then the gossip. Obviously we can't just start firing everyone, and that's not what I'm after here. But what we are trying to say is that eliminating toxic behavior, when we have toxic employees in your company, they're going to start to pull your culture down. We actually had an employee who was fantastic. She was great at her job. Our customers really loved her, but she was a manager, and when she would get in meetings with our other team members, she would belittle them in front of each other. And this was not working for the team. But because she was so great at her job, it was hard to let her go. So we couldn't walk in and just fire her, obviously, even though she was pulling the team down. But what we could do, we taught her, we trained, we sat down and went through, here are ways to handle situations like this. But after a while, when you can't fix that sort of behavior, then it's time to consider what you have to do in order to preserve your culture. Your team, people are not going to want to come in to a new organization and be put into a situation where they feel like they're being belittled. So you're not going to be able to retain the best when you have this sort of toxic behavior happening. The next thing when it comes to your culture, we call this the 20-60-20 rule. This is actually something that Brian Filko came up with after he was in a meeting. I think he was at Waste Management. Brian's our CEO at Jetco. And he said that a new manager came in and he said, all right, I've got this all laid out. I've got the plan, but I know 20% of you guys, you're in. You believe me, you like where we're going. I know I've got your attention. You're going to stay here. You're committed. 60% of you guys, you're not so sure. You think maybe you like me. You kind of get where we're going, but you're not quite on board. And as a leader, my job is to convince you and to pull you along and bring you into this culture. And then the other 20% of you, you don't like me. You don't like where we're going. You don't believe in this. And for the 20% of you who don't believe in what we're doing and don't believe the culture that we're trying to create, I promise I'll make it a very smooth transition out of this company, but you're out. And he knew that he couldn't bring all 100% of people in. Not everybody's going to buy into your culture. But those people that are not in and don't want to support what you're trying to produce inside, those are the people that you need to go ahead and eliminate from the positions that you can pull in, people that are going to support your culture. Which leads to company values and being technically excellent. So just like the story that I told you guys, the employee that we had, she was technically excellent. She was fantastic. But she wasn't living up to our company values. So you've got to find team members who are going to be right in the middle, where that crosses over. And that's important. You can't have someone who always upholds values, but they can't actually perform the job, and vice versa. So I really like this quote from Southwest Airlines. He was asked, who comes first, your employees or your customers? And he said, I said employees come first, and if employees are treated right, they treat the outside world right. The outside world uses the company's products again, and that makes the shareholders happy. That really is the way that it works, and it's not a conundrum at all. So when you're thinking about retention and you're thinking about attracting drivers and attracting your team, make sure you're putting your team first, because when your team is happy, they're the ones that are going to deliver the best product and the best services to your customers. So I gave a few ideas for building culture, but something to consider is that you want to start with easy to implement, high value ideas. All the ones that I mentioned are super easy. Difficult to implement and high value ideas sound like a great idea, but they're not. I mean, you can say, well, I'm going to go out and buy 50 more trucks today and put all my guys in newer trucks. That's a great idea, but it's not always that easy. High value maybe, but difficult to implement. But easy to implement ideas could be small things like sending an email out to the team saying, Bob did a great job today. Here's what Bob did. Way to go, Bob. It sounds so silly and it sounds so small, but these things make a really big difference, and your team members are going to appreciate them. Another thing that we did too, just to share with you guys, it's easy to implement, high value, is we created a driver committee. Anybody else have a driver committee in here? Okay, another idea, internal branding, driver committee. Basically, our driver committee, I think we have 4 or 5 team members on it right now. They're drivers who are elected by their peers, and a person from the driver committee attends every single managerial meeting that we have. So there's never any decision made without driver representation. It's been amazing too, because a lot of times if there is a situation that occurs with one of our drivers, rather than it go all the way up to the top, it goes to the driver committee. It's their peers. The driver committee sorts it out, and oftentimes we don't even hear about it or see it because they're all working. It's peer-to-peer accountability. Everybody's working together. So if you don't have something like that, I highly recommend it. And it gives your drivers a chance to feel like they're definitely a part of the decision-making process, because at the end of the meetings, our driver committee chairman will send an email out to our drivers saying, here's what we talked about, here's what's being done. even if a decision isn't being made at that very moment, they're constantly informed in what's happening in our meetings. So a few more just little things. I think I said celebrate the milestones. We did we were having this was years ago, but workers' comp claims. So we went out and we bought a television. We put it in the middle of the office, and we said, if we can go 30 days without a workers' comp claim, someone's going to win the TV. Everyone thought that we were crazy because we hadn't gone a long time without them. And at the end of 30 days, we hadn't had one. Somebody won the TV. Next month, we did the same thing. Happened again. We gave the TV away. 8 months in a row we went. But it's that visual thing that people were able to walk in every day and they saw this TV, and it reminds them, just like your internal brand. It's a visual affirmation that's going to remind people of what they need to do and how they can be safe. Shout outs, like I said, emails. We do, we call them stand ups or stand downs. Stand up means it's a good thing that's going to happen. Stand down means maybe not so good, but everybody gets together. If we have a stand up meeting, everyone stop work, come into the center of our office, and we do shout outs for people. Christina did a great job today. Here's what our customer said. It's a big deal. People feel appreciated. Listening sessions. If you're not talking to your drivers and hearing what's going on out on the road and what they're concerned about, it's probably a really good idea to bring everybody in. Talk about what their pain points are. Hear what they have to say. Rewards and recognition. I know a lot of people do this, but we do like a yearly award that people vote on. And then unfortunately, the hard part comes in when you have to eliminate employees who are just out of line with your culture. But just remember that those are the ones that are going to pull your culture down. That's when safety failures start to happen. That's when people stop paying attention, when distractions happen, when there are toxic employees in your company. So just to conclude, I've been fortunate that we have great leadership at our company. But if I didn't have great leadership, I'd be probably in a very different place right now. And I can definitely say that the culture is what attracted me to the current company that I'm at, and it's why I'm here right now with you guys today. And so I always say that we have to look to our leaders and look to you guys. People are turning to you. Your employees are turning to you. So if they go home today, what kind of experience are they telling their families that they're having at work? Or in 10 years from now, are they going to look back and say, I worked for such and such company, and it was the most amazing experience I've had. I felt supported. I felt like they trusted me. I felt like they believed in me. So just remember that when you walk into your office tomorrow, that your role is to create a culture where people feel appreciated, and that's how you're going to pull in the best of the best. Thank you.